All advice given is for general information purposes. All legal cases are different, and you should seek the advice of your own attorney before acting or making decisions. No attorney-client privilege applies to communications on this show, and no attorney-client relationship is created by calling or writing in. Attorney Rominger practices only in Pennsylvania and maintains his primary office in Carlisle, Pennsylvania.
Well, good afternoon. Carl Rominger here. 540-0580. That's our talk line number. So if you want to get on the air and ask me a legal question, feel free. Of course, we have a little election coming up on Tuesday. We can talk politics, too. I can tell you what the conventional wisdoms are. I can tell you I happened to be at an event last night where the famous pollster, Bill Clinton's ex-employee and Republican, Dick Morris, was in attendance, and he was a guest at the same event, and he gave an impromptu little presentation for us since they asked him. You know, I think the poor guy can't go anywhere without somebody, especially with the election coming up. He's calling it a Romney victory by 313 votes, which I think is very similar to what Barone is saying as well. He's calling it 315, Michael Barone with the Washington Examiner. So That's what they're saying for Romney. Now, the New York Times, predictably, right? Maybe not predictably, but some of the other papers are suggesting that now Obama looks like he's going to win. Of course, I've been at Real Clear Politics checking it out as well, and it looks like Obama's winning on Real Clear Politics, where popular vote seems to be very evenly divided. The electoral vote doesn't quite seem to be mashing out exactly the same way. So it's interesting. 540-0580. If you want to get here on the air and talk about the presidential election, I'm happy to do that. If you want to ask a legal question, we'll get you on the air and do that as well. Not certain who's going to win it. I can tell you the state attorney general's race seems like it might be over. The guy I'm supporting, Dave Freed, is not polling as high as Kane. So if you know somebody, you got to make if you know somebody who's going out to vote, you might want to talk to them about who they vote for. I have I like his policies, and I always liked him as a prosecutor at the county level. I don't think I can endorse anybody here directly on the air, but I can tell you that looking at their records, etc., one certainly seems to be a more experienced prosecutor than the other, and that would be the local guy in terms of the level of experience. That's something that's important for attorney generals. Also interesting, though, is if Kane does win, it appears that she may launch an investigation into Governor Corbett and his handling of the Sandusky investigation. Obviously, I have a unique set of knowledge in that area, but I would be very curious if that were to happen to see how that pans out. There's been a lot of criticism, both that the report unnecessarily smeared Joe Paterno, which I believe, but also that the governor, then Attorney General, was too slow on it. And I think, in all fairness to him, it's much more complicated than that. And I'd be happy to talk about that if anybody wants to as well. 540-0580. Jay, you're on the air.
Oh, that sounds like a slick lawyer there, Carl. How you doing? I'm just curious with the election coming up and getting all sorts of things in the mail. Frankly, by the way, I've listened to people like Charlie Giroux and others, and it seems to me guys who make their living with one party on the other are always predicting that their party's going to win. So even some of the pollsters, if they lean one way or the other, I think they have their vested interests too. But in advertising, get all these things in the mail, which obviously I can't stop, about one candidate or another. Now, I realize generally if you're in public life, you're kind of above the rules of libel and slander, it seems.
Well, you can say that the president has a terrible venereal disease, and you're probably not going to get sued in America, although if you said that about a private citizen, it would be a lawsuit for sure.
Is there no, and I don't know if truth in advertising, I listen to the radio stations who, of course, make a lot of money and all this stuff, and TV and everything, and are willing to just put whatever else. Is there, I just think some of the stuff that I've read, I question the veracity of it. But is there any truth in advertising that applies to any political ads?
No, not in the traditional sense, right? So it's the same reason that the Supreme Court, for instance, struck down the Valor Act about medals and wearing fake medals. So if I want to go to a cocktail party and put the the silver star on, I can do that. I can't impersonate an officer, but I can pretend to have been a greater war hero than I was, or even have been in a war I wasn't. And so there's no truth in advertising per se. And that with political ads, of course, they're notoriously misleading when broken down. Now, there's a lot of organizations, independent watchdogs. And so if you go on the internet, you can pretty much have a breakdown with a fact check on almost anything that's out there. Like, for instance, Romney was claiming, that Chrysler is moving Jeeps to China. And the breakdown is, it's a little more complex than that. They're building factory over there that would be capable of building them, but that's for that market. And they're, in fact, adding capacity here at the same time, or at least planning on it, according to them at this point. And they came out and said that's completely untrue. But if you go back and you parse the ad as it's run, it doesn't really say that Jeeps are going away just because they know that people would be fearful of that. It's what they infer into it. Yeah. So it's like the famous Willie Horton ad.
Yeah.
And I don't know if for people who don't remember, if you remember, Bush ran an ad against Dukakis involving the furlough of Willie Horton. And that ad is a classic political masterpiece because you can watch the ad, and they actually did, I was in a class setting when they did this. They play the ad for everybody, and then they ask you a series of questions about the ad. And 80% of the group will answer certain things a certain way. But none of that's actually said in the ad. And so the ad was designed to be line by line true, but create an impression in a majority of people who hear it of a few things that weren't actually true. It's just something you inferred into it because of the way it was laid out. So that's how clever the advertisers are.
Well, I don't know if you share my opinion. My opinion, of course, is that our system is so hooked up with slick ad men, PR guys, big money, and I don't care which side you're in. It's like hopeless. It's literally hopeless, especially because the guys who control the rules benefit from it.
I've actually been told that the political ads have gotten less effective because the politicians and their handlers have tried to cut out major advertising firms to save costs and go direct themselves. And there's a lot less of the
and there's so
subtlety.
many of them. After a while, I know there's rabid people that listen to political stations like this one, and I just, I've heard it. Don't come up with a war hero, or Clint Eastwood or somebody else telling me their opinion, because their opinion is no more valid than mine is.
Well, but for some reason, and this is the other thing you got to ask yourself. I mean, all these yard signs. For some reason, if people were actually voting based on some semblance of a knowledge of who was running, right, and some belief structure about who should win, then why the heck do we even need yard signs?
I don't know. They didn't have them. I don't know what they. When I grew up in Philadelphia, I think they put a few of them on poles, like the telephone poles,
right.
The power. But
you know what I mean? I mean,
or buses or something.
I guess because somebody put a Romney sign in their yard, I go, oh wow, I've seen 100 Romney signs.
Yeah, I heard that, and then it don't occur to them. Well, Romney's got to win Pennsylvania because I went through Cumberland County and it was 5-1 on Romney. It's like, well, gee, does that surprise anyone? I find it hard, especially around here. People are ignorant. I mean, just that they think that everything. Everywhere is like Cumberland County or Perry County.
You mean they don't make pot pie and have lard in the potato chips all across America?
I can tell you stories about when I came here in the 70s, but we don't have time for that now.
Well, anyhow, Jay,
we'll have a cigar and talk about it.
We will. All right, I'm gonna jump on some more calls.
All right, take it easy.
All right, man. 540-0580. Hank, you're on the air.
Yes, I'm not too politically correct or anything like that, and I can't quite understand Penn State being sued by these people, and why Penn State is responsible for what three other individuals did, and how come, also the other question is, how come they crucified Paterno and the NCAA nailed the heck out of the athletic program?
Well, let me back up for a second, and we'll start with a general precept that Walmart's not responsible for everything that every cashier does, okay? But high company officials can be guilty of crimes on behalf of the organization. The organization can get in trouble if the high officials do things improperly. So there is some precedent in the law for a corporation or institution to be in trouble based on what its membership did. But it's a strong burden, and you've got to show a lot. That said, quite frankly, Penn State has just rolled over and played dead in this case. And the reason I say that is a lot of the claims are time-barred by statute of limitations, so they're going to pay money on claims that are time-barred that they don't have to pay on. And more interestingly, they didn't have a duty to most of these individuals, and that's a legal concept. So I'll give you an example. If my son goes to, let's say he goes to Shippensburg University someday, and somebody comes onto the campus, a robber or a thief or something, and assaults him as he's walking between classes. It's not their job to protect him against third parties, okay? Now, if the argument is, well, they didn't lock the dorms down and there was problems with the locks on the doors and the electronic lock kept coming open and then thieves found out about it, you might be able to pigeonhole in on some theory that they, had a specific duty because they'd undertaken to make you feel safe in the dorm, and then when they didn't do it right, they may have given themselves a duty, but they don't have a general duty of protection to every member of their organization. And then you go a step farther, and if a basketball camp comes in and they rent the space on Shippensburg University for the summer, and my son attends that, it's the basketball camp who's responsible for him, not the university. They've leased the land, and landlords are not responsible generally for their tenants. Or businesses are not responsible for third-party contractors. So if I hire a guy to mow the lawn for me, and a rock kicks out of the lawnmower, I can't be sued over it, generally. He can be sued over it. It's a delegable duty. So duty is very important, and duty did not exist as a legal concept in most of these cases. So again, not only is most of them time-barred, they also don't have any legal requirement to pay. They could win in a court of law very easily on what we call summary judgment. The judge would simply say there's no legal duty that flowed between Penn State and these individuals who are suing. So it's silly. I got to go to break. When we come back from break, I want to talk some more to you. Okay, hold on a minute.
Okay.
Hey, welcome back. Carl Rominger here. All right, we were just talking about with Hank about the PSU investigation. And your last question, Hank, what was that?
That's about how they crucified Joe Paterno and how they can hold him responsible. I know he's dead and they can't press charges and all that, but how the NCAA nailed Penn State for that fund and everything like that.
And take away the wins and pretend they didn't happen like they do in Russia. The history just didn't exist. Those players didn't run with those balls or catch them, or we'll just blot the Vladimir out of the photo and say he never was a member of Parliament, right?
Correct, and that's what confuses me, because I look at what Sandusky did as an individual, and now when I used to substitute, the rules they gave me when I substituted at a public school was that if there was a problem, I reported it to the principal. If there was a sexual problem or anything, I reported it to the principal, and that was my requirement.
Right.
But after I reported it to the principal, I was not allowed to talk about it to anybody else.
Well, the law says that you have to report it. If you have to report it to the government, unless you're in an organization, then you have to give it to the head of the organization or the person appointed by the organization to give it out.
Correct.
So if Joe Paterno referenced it and passed it up the line, he was completely done his legal duty. Now, if you remember at the press conference, the state police come out and say, well, it was a moral lapse or an ethical lapse. And last I knew, the state police in Pennsylvania, unlike the Iranian Guard, is not supposed to be enforcing morals or ethics.
Correct.
They're supposed to be enforcing laws. So it's all around unfortunate. And I think, and this is my personal belief, remember, I cross-examined Mike McQuarrie, and I'm pretty sure at the end of the day, based on how that evening went down when he went home and told his father and Dr. Drainoff whatever he told him, because I don't think it's absolutely clear, but I think the best evidence we have is what they did that night. And two medical doctors didn't feel compelled to call. They were both mandatory reporters. Neither one felt compelled to report what Mike told them to anybody. And they were outside the organization, so they weren't free not to report it if they thought there had been child abuse. So whatever he told them that night, and based on what they've had to say, it definitely wasn't as graphic as he later told, I think, the grand jury that he told Paterno. So it seems that Paterno got put in a very unfair position because now Free report comes out, and Louis Freeh's like basing it on a couple emails, and Paterno wasn't even looped in on the emails. He's just referenced in one or two of them. And one of them says, Joe wants to know what's going on with this or something like that. And, of course, my big issue with that is, in how many organizations has an employee ever referenced the boss's name when really the boss isn't really, they're just trying to prod somebody.
Right.
The boss was really concerned about this, or the boss is going to be, Joe's going to be really upset if he don't get back to. That's not Joe. It's somebody using his name in vain. It happens all the time. I imagine in the police barracks somewhere, the police officer says the chief wants to know, and really he means, hey, Sergeant, I want to know, but I'm going to invoke the chief's name. So.
Well, I was just curious about this, and one more thing. How is McQuarrie a squealer type deal?
The whistleblower lawsuit. Right. Yeah, he's saying that he was retaliated against for being a whistleblower because he wasn't given a chance to interview for another job. The interesting thing about that is, of course, they changed coaches, right?
Right.
And they kept who? They kept almost nobody. And I think that had nothing to do with Sandusky. Generally speaking, I think when you have a turnover in coaching staff, major coaching staff, there's usually a huge turnover. So I don't think it's even clear he would have kept his job in a new regime anyhow.
Okay, well, these were the questions I had, and I just wanted to get some more information.
Yeah, just what I was thinking. These are just my thoughts, obviously.
Oh, okay.
But take care, man.
Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
540-0580. Roger, you're on the air.
Hey, Carl, I want to make a comment about the Penn State thing, and then I have something to do with, sheriff serving complaints and so forth. Yeah. But on the Penn State thing, Tom Corbin getting up and saying Joe Paterno didn't meet his moral responsibility. I'm a member of the Penn State Nation, and we heard that. How many times have politicians like him taken $300,000-$400,000 from Marcellus Shale people when asked about should he be taking the money from a moral responsibility? They say, well, it's legal. We're following the law. They don't answer the moral question. Right. So Penn Staters are pretty perceptive, and when Tom Corbin got up and said that was like the pimp in the whorehouse claiming he didn't know what was going on.
Right.
Okay.
I don't know what these girls are doing. Everybody likes to come visit, but I don't know why they're here.
Yeah, every politician takes money, says that. We are legally solid. They don't answer the moral question.
Well, here's the thing. In election law, right, we have this no quid pro quo, right? That's the law. So I can give my favorite senator $2 million. Theoretically, and in Pennsylvania we have no limits on direct donations to a politician. So the governor, for instance, can take $50,000, $100,000, $500,000 pop, and as long as it's not given in exchange for some exact benefit. But do you really think somebody gives $500,000 to the governor or $50,000 to the governor and doesn't expect at least a generally good feeling to come back their way?
Absolutely. Now, Freed's a good guy, don't get me wrong, but the Penn State Nation up there and those Republican counties where you've got Penn Staters, they are not going to aid anybody that is tied to Tom Corbin, and Tom Corbin is in trouble with the Penn State Nation. That alumni block is pretty sophisticated. They know what went on. When he made that moral statement, a politician talking about morality? Are you kidding me?
We talked about this, a couple other guys and I, last night at this event I was at, and we were just chit-chatting generally. The thing that we were wondering about is how Corbett and his advisors missed the boat on this one. Because what he should have done, this is, again, thinking out loud, what he should have done was recused himself from that board meeting saying, I was the original investigator on this case. So even though I'm on the board, I'm going to recuse myself from this decision, and I'm not going to talk. I don't want to predispose you to anything. So you guys act on your knowledge. And he should have done that. And number two.
Well, you know what was happening, Carl? See, what happened is he played that game when he indicted all the Democrats first. And
right.
What happened, if I was a Republican, I'm cleaning out my computer file for the next 2.5 years.
Right.
I'm getting rid of papers. Okay, and so when they come in, there's nothing there. The bottom line is this: when he made that happen, he felt like he could almost do anything using the law. But what he didn't realize is the Penn State Nation, the 6th largest alumni board, running from here to Indonesia to Hawaii to Germany was not going to stand for it, and they have votes. And those people are making their numbers felt in Pike County. All these little hunt and bear counties have never voted for a Democrat in their life.
And I don't think you're off the mark, and I'll tell you why, because I talked to a guy last night who told me he's voting for Kane. And if you'd have told me that this guy was going to vote for a Democrat ever, I would have called you a liar 6 different ways to sunset. But he then caveated it with, and the only reason I'm doing it is because of what Tom Corbett did to Joe Paterno.
Well, let me say it this way. If I voted for Democrats and I voted for Republicans, I voted for Tom Corbett. But after that statement on morality, he will never get a vote from me. Never, ever, ever. Because I don't want a politician taking money talking to me about morality. Someone's met the law, but morality. Come on, you know what that game is, okay?
Oh, yeah.
And so that's not going to fly. And I think within the Penn State nation, I think he really miscalculated how loyal people are. Joe Paterno has a track record. The man was 70-some years old when this thing hit, okay? And we really don't know all that took place. Corbett went up there and saw the opportunity to take a lead role as a prosecutor on a board of trustees. He was talking like a prosecutor. He was acting like a prosecutor, talking about, nothing disturbs him more than sex crimes and child abuse. Yet he's taking money from the second mile, so he's got slime all over him. And I'm telling you, these Penn Staters and the ones I've talked to that I meet casually, they smell a rat.
Right.
They smell a rat, and as far as they're concerned, Tom Corbett took the lead on this, okay? And as far as they're concerned, whether he was behind it or not, they're looking at him as the person that they can get to. And that's how they're seeing this thing.
Very interesting.
And now Freed, he's a good guy. I mean, he's just a victim of this.
Well, and that's actually how I feel about it. I feel it's so unfair to him because Kane has been able to basically run against Corbett, and his merits are just marginalized. And I think at the end of the day, he would be a great attorney general. But if the people want to have a perception, I guess, of independent investigation, maybe that's where Freed should come out a little. I mean, I guess he's promised to do it, but I don't think people are trusting the same way that they are that Kane. At least, if nothing else, you can go, well, Kane will do it for at least naked political reasons, so I can believe her when she says it. Freed, I've got to trust him to do it, but he's going to have a political disincentive because the party might rally around. I feel like you're losing the better of the two attorney general candidates because of a bigger issue that doesn't involve him.
I think you're probably right. I have a question about. Can I get a?
Yeah, hold on. I got to go to break. Just to hold. Don't go anywhere.
Okay, all right.
Hold on.
Mm-hmm.
540-05. Hey, welcome back. 540-0580. Talking law. I got legal questions. Let's hear them. You want to talk about presidential politics? Let's hear them. You want to talk about the Attorney General's office, the governor, and Penn State? We'll talk about that as well. Okay, Roger, you're back here.
Okay, I have a question regarding this. My family in-laws, they were served with this complaint.
Yeah. Then
the attorneys knocked the complaint out of court on what's called preliminary objections,
okay.
And they said because he did not, it had to do with property in the will, and they said that they didn't notify all the cousins, all the brothers and sisters.
Right.
Now that they're serving amended complaints, when they send that amended complaint out, they have the sheriff going back out to the property, knocking on the door, scaring everybody. Does that have to be done by sheriff when it's already in court, when it gets thrown out like that and redone, or is that just is that a safeguard, or is somebody just trying to intimidate somebody?
Pennsylvania rules of civil procedure require that anything filed in any county besides Philadelphia or Pittsburgh to be served by the sheriff generally on what we call original process. And so any civil suit, the original process does have to be served by the sheriff. And if the case was thrown out and it's been refiled as a new complaint, then it's going to...
It's an amended complaint.
Yeah. And theoretically, the amended complaint probably doesn't require sheriff service, okay?
Okay.
Probably doesn't, but if the original one was found defective for service reasons, you know what it was thrown out on or no?
It was thrown out because they didn't serve all the brothers and sisters.
Right, so it was thrown out on a service issue, so they've got to reserve the amended complaint. So yeah, they're not trying to intimidate anybody.
Well, do they have to reserve it on everybody on an amended complaint, or can't they just mail it?
No, I think on an amended complaint where the issue was service, okay?
Right, it was service.
It was thrown out on a service issue, then you still don't have good service. So you got to get that original service by sheriff. And the original service, I mean, this would be a second original service, but for our purposes, we're still going to call that second service an original service. After that, everything can be done by mail.
Okay.
And
so this is not just like, they're trying to intimidate people.
No, and I'll tell you, I don't think so. And here's the other thing, and I think this is important to put in the back of your mind. Even if the lawyer goes, well, I probably don't have to serve it by sheriff, but I'm not sure because I'm worried that they're going to raise an issue again on service and say that I should have and that I couldn't have done it by mail, even to people who'd already been served with your first complaint, even if this is an amended complaint.
Right.
As a lawyer, you go, you know what? I'm not going to create an issue. I've already got kicked out of court once, so I'm just going to be safe.
Now, let me just ask you one little tidbit on that. When they serve that thing by sheriff, now they're serving the one family member. He doesn't want anything to do with it.
Right.
Okay, so he's like, I'm not signing for anything. But the bottom line is now, because he's out of state. The bottom line is when a person, like, let's say you send me something by sheriff, shouldn't I be able to say that just send it to me regular mail instead of having them come out to my house and the neighbors wondering what the hell is going on?
Right. The answer is you can offer to go to the sheriff and pick it up in person. That's usually what they'll do. Or you can go to the lawyer on the other side and you can sign an acceptance of service, and then they don't have to have a sheriff serve you at all.
But the main thing is this is necessary. They're not just trying to intimidate people.
Correct.
Okay, that's what I was trying to get to, and you've answered that question. Because I think, sometimes people try to use the government agents to scare people.
Send the constable out with it. And I had a client not too long ago that wanted the guy, quote, served at work. And I'm like, why do you want him served at work? Because I already know the answer. Well, I just want people to see what he did. And I'm like, no, You're not going to do that because that's, A, a cheap shot, and B, it just looks dirty, and C, who cares? Because all you're doing is suing the guy for, $500 in a district justice complaint. I doubt the fact that the constable shows up at his workplace is going to cause everybody to, to scramble and decide he's a horrible person. So,
look, I'll let you go, and you answered the question.
All right, my friend.
Like I said, I was wondering about governmental and using the sheriff to intimidate people, but you've answered that very well, and I thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. 540-0580. You want to talk about anything legal? Planning on getting a divorce? Been in a car accident? You want to talk a little politics, obviously. I want to let you know we're going to have Mark Virginis on here from 2 to 3. He's our financial guru, so he's going to help us out with some, we'll talk about all things financial, world economy. Got a new year coming up here. We got the presidential election. He can give us some heads up on that. And, of course, he's a full-service financial advisor. So if you have any questions about finances, get them ready for the second hour. We'll throw them in there. On Sunday, November 11th, I'll be joining Bob Carey for Garden Talk. That's on Sunday from 11:30 to 12:30, and you'll have to go to our website, romingerlaw.com, to get the stations that'll be on. Saturday, November 17th, Keystone Elder Law will be here. Remember those guys, Dave Nesbitt and crew. And I know the last time they were here, they answered a lot of questions for folks. So if you have an elder law issue or a family member who is elderly, save that date, Saturday, November 17th. And tune in from 1 to 3 to listen to us. And, of course, we'll have Dave Nesbitt and Keystone Elder Law. December 11th, I'm going to be at the North York County Fishing Game discussing gun rights and laws with a question-and-answer session to follow. Hope to see you there. And let's see. I think I got somebody on the line here. No, Shane, do I have anybody on the line now? Oh, well, they're chit-chatting away. I can't tell. I got to get a name off this person. So, seriously, though, don't forget, if you want to, come December 11th to that event. And, of course, if your organization is looking for somebody to come out and speak about anything, let me know. I'm happy to do that, as you know. And no. Okay. Well, I guess we lost our caller. Oh, well. So it's one of those days. Now, what was I saying? Oh, so Dick Morris last night told us, And it's very interesting to meet him in person. Let me tell you, first of all, the guy knows a little bit about everything and a lot more. He thinks that the Obama crew missed the boat because they campaigned negatively in a bunch of states, but they left Pennsylvania and a few other states that they didn't originally see as battleground states alone and didn't soften them up with massive buys of negative campaign advertising. And that the Romney campaign has cleverly moved into those states here in the 11th hour, bombarding with positive advertising and taking the rise off of the debates. And he believes that the final election tally is going to be 313 electoral votes, and he's going to take Pennsylvania and Florida and Ohio, and that while Obama has locked up a few of these other states with the negative advertising, he didn't spend anywhere near the amounts of money. We're talking about the coordinated money, not just the candidate himself, and that's why. Tom, you're on the air with Carl Rominger.
Yes, sir. Real estate question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Recently looking at a 5-acre parcel of land to build a house on. The deed said it was plus or minus 5 acres, plus 5 acres plus or minus.
Right.
What is the standard for plus or minus? The real estate agent said it was. That's just a term.
Right.
Plus
or minus 5 acres?
Yeah, that's what it said. The deed said it was 5 acres plus or minus.
Yeah, well, here's the reason why that's the case. Acres are volumetric measures.
Right.
So an acre, if somebody has a 4-acre piece of land, it could be a square. And so, it could have 4 equal sides. Or
right.
It could have 10 sides, or it could be bound by a creek that turns in, a big S-curve on one side. So as a result, because converting, what would we say, non-basic shapes, not circles or octagons or squares or triangles, but complex shapes into true volume measurements is very difficult. And so it's a rough estimation. And what they're trying to tell you is it's about 5 acres, give or take, but we didn't do the math exactly because it's not really a square and it's got some odd angles in it and there's a turn somewhere, 20 degrees here. And so you've really got 7 sides to this oddly structured piece of land. And so we did some volumetric calculations on it and we put it at 5 acres, but we're not telling you. It could be 4.89 or it could be 5.12, but we're close.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. So that so it's a possibility. It actually could be less than 5 acres, but not substantially.
Right. And that's really what that means. And it's also just, and even, here's the thing, and even if it was a perfect square, right, and we knew the exact volume of it, and we knew it was exactly 5 acres, the lawyer probably still would say 5 acres plus or minus, just in case there's a minor calculation error.
Oh, okay.
So,
all right, well, that answers that question. I thank you for that.
No problem. Take care.
You too.
All right, bye. 540-0580, Carl Rominger answering your legal questions. See you in a minute. Hey, welcome back. Carl Rominger here, 540-0580. Kathleen, you're on the air. Kathleen?
Yes, hello. Hi.
You're here.
Yes, hi. I was wondering, Jerry Sandusky is from the mid of Pennsylvania, and when they sent him to prison, they sent him to the Southwest, which makes him more inaccessible. His wife can't visit him, and so on and so forth. Why did that happen?
Well, just so you know, the state prison does not really care where your family is. In fact, they moved guys out to Ohio and West Virginia not too long ago, although they tried to claim they were people without frequent visitors. Although one would think maybe they didn't have frequent visitors because they're already long ways away from family. So whether you're from Philadelphia, you could end up in the same prison. You could be from Pittsburgh and end up in Camp Hill or up in Detroit.
Well, then why did he end up there?
They picked that prison because it's probably the most secure. And my understanding is they have the death row, or about 80% of death row inmates in that prison. So
you're kidding me.
They're used to very controlled handling of prisoners. And I think for Jerry's protection, that's why they did that.
Oh, okay. Well, I really didn't understand that.
Yeah, and it is quite...
Is he that bad? Did they have to control him? I don't understand.
It's not him. It's the safety issues in the prison system. Here's the problem. And it's not like in the movies. The Pennsylvania Department of Corrections is very, very professional. I've been to many of their prisons. I've been up to Forest. I've been to Retreat. I've been to Cole Township. I probably spent a month in state prison myself. When I add up all the time I've been in the different state prisons.
Okay. All right. I'm calling the right number then.
So what I would tell you seriously, though, is they're as a general rule, I mean, I may have one or two instances where, the guy guarding the door was a little crazy, but everybody's a consummate professional. They're very kind overall, and the prisoners don't seem to be being mistreated, and they seem to be able to produce them quickly. It's not like there's, some big secret going on. But the flip side is there are a lot of bad people in prisons who know they're never getting out, and so why not have the badge of honor? I'm the guy that shanked the priest, or I'm the guy that beat the heck out of, so Al Capone. So unfortunately, for a client like Jerry, it's very difficult for the prison system to maintain and guarantee his safety if they simply let him wander around, not because he's going to do anything or they're worried about him per se. They're worried about somebody else just trying to make a name for themselves or get in the newspaper, or God forbid, some of these prisoners will sometimes commit crimes in jail just so they can get a ride to a courthouse because it breaks up the routine. And actually, I'm going to backpedal here a second because it reminds me of a few years back, the prison system came up with the idea that maybe we shouldn't, every time somebody does something criminal in prison, give them as many court visits as possible. So as we've built up these ability to do arraignments and things by video conference, it's become less attractive for prisoners to commit crimes inside prisons because then they end up going nowhere except maybe for a jury trial out of the prison, and so it doesn't turn into the same kind of vacation. And it's weird for us to think about it, but if you were doing 25 years in a state prison, it becomes a vacation to get in a van and get driven to a courthouse somewhere.
Okay.
Because it breaks up your routine. So the danger is you might have a guy who just wants to be famous. You might have a guy who just wants a vacation to a courthouse or just wants to be tried for his third murder. So that's the issue.
But do you think that we're protecting Sandusky more than from prison inmates?
He's getting better protection from the other prison inmates than a lot of inmates would get. And I have a feeling the other reason is, quite frankly, if something happens to Jerry in a Pennsylvania state prison that could have been prevented by the prison, it's not going to be his family that's going to drive him nuts. It's going to be the international and national press who are going to, then break down everything that the prison did and why they did it and how it happened and how could it happen. And they'll have a convention at The Hague, and the International Tribunal will say that the U.S. treats its prisoners poorly. So for a lot of reasons, but they're a very professional organization, and the things that they're doing are just designed to protect him and protect the integrity. Because you'd want to know, if your son or daughter committed a crime, let's say, and they're only going to prison for, say, 3 years, you would want to know that while they're there, they're safe, right? I mean...
Well, yeah, but why does he have to be safe in Waynesburg versus central Pennsylvania?
and that's the answer is up to the prison officials, but I believe that's because that prison is the one that they felt they could best accommodate that.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Thank you very much.
Right, take care.
It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Well, thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
540-0580. Bill, what's going on?
Hey, well, Carl, thank you for taking my call. I guess you heard yesterday about the unions in New York stopping the volunteers from Alabama entering the state to help the victims, the victims of the disaster.
No, tell me what happened.
Well, apparently the New York union stopped all the volunteer vehicles coming from Alabama specifically, and they made them turn around and leave the state.
Huh.
And my son outside Philadelphia heard on the radio that the union, the conversation of the union thugs, and that's what they are,
right.
Calling the utility violators scabs and accusing them of taking their money.
Right.
Now, how can this be allowed to happen? And what authority do they have to force utility vehicles coming to help the disaster leave the state?
because they weren't union guys, right? They must have some contract.
No, they were non-union. Alabama.
That's what I mean. They were non-union guys, so they didn't. But I wonder if they control the contract. So, would they literally force them out by force of law or just by threat?
I guess just by threat, from what I understand. I didn't hear of any law enforcement agencies getting into it, but how can this be allowed to happen?
Well, it's happened. Can it be investigated and somebody be in trouble? Possibly, yes. But last I checked, the unions and the politicians, particularly in New York City, probably are on the same page, and so I doubt there'll be a real investigation.
Well, I would wish some lawyer would initiate a class action suit against this union on behalf of the people suffering in this disaster.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate, but this is not atypical, and this is the red tape weirdness that we see in the world. So I remember working in the theater, working backstage, and I was an electrician, so I did lights and wires and all that good stuff. And we had a union show in, and I picked up a piece of wood to carry it, and somebody's like, whoa, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I'm just going to move that over there. They're like, no, you have carpenter.
You can't.
That. It's wood.
Yes, I've been in that situation myself.
And I'm like,
I moved a bale of wire away from where they were going to put an electrical outlet.
Uh-huh.
And they're standing around waiting for somebody to come and move it, and I just moved it. And man, they raised all kinds of heck that I moved it. I was working for a plumber at the time.
Right.
They were going to stand it. Well, what I think is one of the reasons they kicked these people out of state is because they didn't want the people of New York to know that the utility companies in Alabama could do 3 houses compared to 1 house done by a union.
Right. And do you know there's an order you have to go into? I don't know if you know that. But I think the pipe fitter goes before the electrician, and there's a whole order when you're building certain things. So sometimes one guy gets to lay his pipe out before the other guy gets to lay his wire out, and before somebody else gets to. It's complicated, and my point on this is that's a whole series of red tape that the unions have created to help preserve their own jobs. Same thing as these gas shortages where they're having trouble getting gas in, but part of the problem is they haven't waived completely the rules for what type of gas can come into New Jersey.
Right, yes, I understand that.
So the shortage is created by nothing else than a piece of paper.
Well, it appears that the unions have practically wrecked this country, and I guess they're continue to wreck it as long as the politicians are paid by them.
Well, that's why you have public sector unions, to keep everybody happy. 540-0580. I'll be back after the break. We're going to have Mark Virginis on with us. We'll keep taking your legal questions, of course, and we'll talk about all things political since it is the political season.